This is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Friday, March 6, 2026, and today will be better than yesterday. I'm Buster Olney, working from my hotel down in Miami. Taylor Schwenk is back in ESPN. And Taylor, how you doing?
Buster, I'm well. I'm off camera right now because we've got new friends here on the show. We've got a big piece to discuss. It's rattling the baseball world. I'm very excited.
That would be the unveiling of the top 100 players as we start the top of the first. Their number one topic today, ESPN on Wednesday published its list of top 100 players in baseball. And to discuss that, I have joining me Jesse Rogers, who, of course, covers baseball for ESPN. Jesse, how you doing?
Good, Buster. I have a lot of thoughts on our own piece. I have my own critique of our own piece, so it's coming. I'm ready to go.
Okay, we're going to get to that. We're also joined by Liz Finny, who I think, Liz, you're the maestro of the top 100, our editor who compiled this list, correct?
Yes, that is me. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, okay. So as we get started, I want you to explain sort of how we put this list together.
So this year it was a little bit different. We ended up having about 24 people send in their own individualized top 100, and we averaged that together. We used point systems. So, if you ranked Shohei Ohtani first, he was 100 points and so on, and then added up those point totals to get our final overall list. It was awesome. We worked with a ton of different departments to get some really cool graphics. Like, people have seen baseball card GIFs. That is how I say it. I don't say GIFs. That rotate. And it was an awesome project. We had a bunch of you guys do write-ups for each player and give predictions. So it turned out really nicely, but it is not without controversy, definitely.
Okay, what are the main points of controversy that you see in the list this year?
So one of the things we actually talked about too, kind of as an editor group, was Mike Trout not making the list. It blew some people away. He ended up coming in at 107, so just barely missed it. And he's probably the biggest faller from last year to this year's list. Last year, he was number 33. This year, he missed it at 107, so fell down quite a ways. And that was even with some of our colleagues ranking him as high as 67 and still didn't make that list.
Yeah, I remember last couple of years when I've taken that list around to players and asked for their audit, he was always the player that got the most reaction because I don't think he wasn't in the top 10 the last couple of years, if I remember correctly. And they would go, "What are you doing? It's Mike Trout. Like, he's an inner circle Hall of Famer. You guys are crazy. How could you possibly have him down that low?" I was really curious about, at the top of the list, how quickly we'd get to the pitchers. Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens in particular, Garrett Crochet, some of the top guys. Jesse, when you saw the list, what did you think?
Well, I can't believe Garrett Crochet is the 8th best player in baseball. I'm just not there quite yet. So there were some interesting things about that list that was number one on my mind. But the other one, bigger picture, is how we incorporate injury to this whole thing.
Yeah.
If a guy was injured last season, how long was he injured? If he's had consecutive injury-prone years. So I don't quite know if Ronald Acuna Jr. should be so high, and I don't know if Yordan Alvarez should be so low. So those are sort of the things that went through my mind. Very difficult. I had to predict Bryce Harper's season when he was coming back from his elbow injury, and he did not like my prediction. But who knew how many games he was going to play? It's so hard to judge a guy coming off injury. Kyle Tucker's had 2 years where he's been injured. Healthy, he might have a 9-WAR season. Banged up, might be more like a 4-WAR season. So that's a difficult proposition. But I don't understand how Crochet's 8 and Yamamoto's 17, if we want to get back to the questions that I had about this list.
Okay, I got to follow up on what you said, though. Bryce Harper didn't like what the prediction for him. You sort of explain that, please.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go too deep into the nerdy stuff, but I was looking at past players that had missed time. And I remember Joe Madden saying this about Kyle Schwarber in 2016, famously, when he came back after a knee injury to make it to the World Series. He said, we might get a burst out of him, but if he was back for a full month, we'd see a drop-off. whether it be adrenaline wearing off or whatever the case may be. And I thought that about Bryce, that maybe we'd see a burst of home runs, but his batting average might plummet. The only problem was I made that prediction when he was supposed to come back in like August. He was back in May, and so his timing was not off. And Bryce chose the playoffs to remind me of that prediction, if you want to be honest. If we want to be honest. So, yeah, players read this stuff. And he was right. I was wrong. But I didn't know he was coming back so quickly. Testament to him and his recovery abilities.
Yeah, they hang on to that for sure. Players can hang on to that, and they'll remind you. I did something like that last year. Kike Hernandez was not happy about something that I had said during the year. So that is interesting. Jesse, give me a player who you felt like was too low. Because it was a player, I can tell you, I was like, are you kidding me? He's that low? But you can start.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking in a negative way, right? Like he should have been higher on the list.
Should have been higher, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Now I'm a little maybe Chicago biased, but Michael Busch is better than number 86 based on what he's done. And I'll give you just one reason for it. He's one of 6 left-handers in the history of the Cubs to hit 30 or more home runs in a single season. Now, he only hit 13 at home and 21 on the road, but doesn't matter. It still counts. Left-handers at Wrigley have a lot of trouble slugging. The wind, particularly in the last couple of years, has blown in off the lake in towards home plate. It messes with your head. It can mess with your head when you go on the road. But Michael Busch fought through all of that, hit 34 home runs, and played really good defense. Now, he didn't play against all left-handed pitching, so maybe his numbers are skewed a little bit. He wasn't facing them all, but he is this year. In any case, I think he's better than the 86th player on that list.
The guy who I was just like, wow. And Liz, you know this because you were working on these top 10 rankings at different positions with me. Geraldo Perdomo being the 32nd best player, but more specifically, ranked 7th among shortstops. And when I did my list, I had him based on the feedback I got at 2nd. And so to have him behind a lot of the other guys, including Elly De La Cruz, that kind of blew my mind because Geraldo Perdomo has gotten results. Like, we're all excited about Elly De La Cruz and his potential, Jesse, but how in the world does he rank ahead of Geraldo Perdomo?
Liz?
No. I'm not putting that question to you, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that other players on that team, it's almost like the Michael Busch factor. There's other players that have a little bit more notoriety on that team. And when you're putting together a list, like, can we really have that many Diamondbacks or that many Cubs in the top 20, top 30, top 40? So the guy that's lesser known falls a little bit. I think that's probably the answer to that question.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to have some fun here. We're going to do a draft, our own draft with the 3 of us. And we'll go through, I don't know, we'll see, 3 to 5 rounds. We'll see how quickly this goes. And just see how much that mirrors what we actually did in the top 100. Okay, so Liz, since you're our guest here today, we decided that you get the number 1 overall pick. Who you got?
I have Shohei Ohtani at number 1. I don't know how you can not have a two-way generational talent like him at number 1. And most of us felt that way, actually. All but 5 people had him number 1. The 5 people who didn't have him at number 1, do you guys care to guess who was number 1?
Wow, I can't believe some people didn't actually have him at number 1. That's a shock to me. I don't know how you feel, Jesse.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. The two-way thing puts it over the top easily.
He's getting value on both sides.
So,
so we had,
and it's a full season of pitching now rather than him starting in, mid-June last year and still ended up with a sub-3 ERA.
I would assume the other 5 were Judge.
Yes, other 5 were Judge.
They were all judging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. All right, Jesse, you got the 2nd pick in this draft. Who would you get?
Well, I'm going to throw a Clayton Kershaw curveball at you.
I knew you would do this. I told Liz yesterday you would throw a curveball here.
Yeah, I'm not going to take Judge. I'm going to take Skubal. I want my old school pitcher on the mound every 5 days, going 7, 8, 9 innings. I'm going pitcher over hitter. I'm going Tarek Skubal, the 2-time Cy Young winner.
You know, you're a Chicago guy, but I'm feeling a little bit like I'm the Bulls. Okay, you just took Sam Bowie with the number 2 pick, with all due respect to Tarek, and I'm taking Aaron Judge as the number 3 pick. I don't know how you pass on him. So Judge goes 3. Liz, you're up. Number 4.
Number 4. So I think this might be not what people would pick, but I would go Cal Raleigh at number 4.
Wow.
No disrespect to Bobby Witt Jr., but 60 home run season from a catcher last year. He played 159 games. He plays anywhere close to that again and is playing at the level that he did last year. It's incredible to me to hit that many home runs at that position.
He is number 7 on our top 100 list. And it's interesting. I actually had a friend ask me today when he looked at the USA lineup, how in the world is Cal Raleigh hitting 6th? Coming off last year, it speaks to the depth of that team. All right, Jesse, you got the 5th overall pick.
Well, I won't go with another curveball and take Skeens to have my rotation already. No, I won't do that. It's a tough call between Bobby Witt Jr. and Juan Soto. I mean, I love left-handers, like even more than right-handers in a sense, because they're just have so much more ability to slug because there's so much more right-handed pitching. Soto and Tucker, the 2 hitters that have as many walks as strikeouts with a 500 slug. Witt is enticing though, but I'm gonna go with Juan Soto as my first hitter on the board. Yeah,
Man,
I'm gonna go with Juan Soto.
I'm feeling like another one dropped into my lap. Bobby Witt on our top 100 was number 3. Judge was number 2. I got the number 2 and the number 3. Thank you, Jesse. That is awesome.
You got it.
I appreciate it.
Sometimes
All right, Liz.
you got to go against the grain a little bit.
Yeah.
I told you, Liz. I told you he was going to do this.
You did. You did. And I'm not going to go against the grain here. And what are we at? Number 7?
Yes.
I'm going to go number 7, Paul Skeens.
Yeah, I figured as much.
You just 23-year-old. Look at him go, 2 seasons below 2 ERA. Insane.
Absolutely dominant. All right, Jesse, who you got next?
I'm gonna maybe throw another curveball. I'm taking Jose Ramirez.
Yeah,
I think he's a little bit too low. Yeah. I think he's a little bit too low on our list. The incredible consistency, and now put him in my lineup with the guys around him instead of the Guardians lineup. His numbers are going to jump even more. I'm taking Jose Ramirez switch hitter. So I took a lefty. I took a switch hitter. I kind of like this. I like this balance that I'm creating early on here.
All right, so here are the players left on our top 100 board. Number 8, Garrett Crochet. Number 9, Julio Rodriguez. Number 10, Ronald Acuna Jr. I think Liz knows who I'm going with, though, because I've been talking about him with her for a while, and that would be
he was going to be my pick.
Yeah, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who last year during the postseason went from being a star to being a superstar, inner circle, great player. Thank you again. Guys, you guys are being so nice to me, despite the fact I'm picking in the number 3 spot. Okay, Liz, who you got with your 4th pick?
I think I'm going to go J-Rod, Julio Rodriguez. I think that we haven't seen the best from him yet.
Yep.
He was much better in the second half last year, and I'm hoping that he continues that and really kind of finds his own this year. So he would be my pick.
I think that's a good one, and I agree with you. He was on our position rankings, number 1 center fielder in baseball. Yep. Jesse, your 4th and last pick in this exercise.
Okay, so I'm going to take a second pitcher. And again, a guy I thought should have been, I think Crochet and Yamamoto should be flipped, to be honest, after what he did in the World Series. I can't believe people voted Yamamoto post-World Series and he ends up at 17. Like, that's a vote a year ago, maybe. So I'm taking Yamamoto as my second pitcher in this draft.
Okay. I agree with you. I think Yamamoto should be ahead of Crochet on our list, but I also think Crochet is amazing. Leading the major leagues in strikeouts last year with 255, leading the American League in innings, and this is someone who I think he's going to continue to grow, and he is a beast. And we saw it last year. It felt like there were times when he was carrying the Red Sox. So, well, this was super fun. Sorry you guys lost and I won. Liz, I
actually agree with them. I actually agree with them.
All right, Liz. Thanks for joining us. It was fun doing this.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was so much fun.
Great job on the list.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Jesse, I want to ask you about a couple of injuries that have popped up in the last couple of days and see how big of a deal these are. The Houston Astros sent all-star shortstop Jeremy Peña to see a hand specialist after his right ring finger kind of got dinged when he was fielding a ground ball the other day. And right-hander Hunter Greene left the Reds camp due to right elbow stiffness. scale of 1 to 10, how much concern do you have with each of those injuries?
Yeah, Hunter Greene much higher,
Yep.
7 or 8.
Yep.
You hear MRI on the elbow on an all-star pitcher like that. I mean, that could tank the Reds' hopes. I mean, they're a precarious team in general. I mean, we saw them barely make the postseason last year. They added Suarez back. Their whole team is based on that starting staff and a guy like Hunter Greene. Maybe they could survive it, but that would be a huge blow. Much higher concern there. Talk about a fractured finger. It's going to force Peña out of the WBC. That's a 5 to me. You know, he did get hurt last year, hit by a pitch. So you don't want to see a guy piling up the injuries, right? Best productivity is availability, right? But I wouldn't worry too much about Peña with a month to go until the regular season. Different story with Hunter Greene.
Yeah, it feels like, in such a competitive National League, you're right. I think that if Hunter Greene is out for an extended period of time, then it's going to really hurt their chances. And they had to scrape their way into the postseason last year, and it had become even more difficult without Hunter Greene. Wanted to get your pick for the WBC. Who you got winning it?
Yeah, I mean, I was around Team USA, so I don't have to pitch against them, but somebody will have to. They scored 29 runs in the 2 exhibition games I was at, but the Dominican Republic can match them bat for bat. So, Buster, we don't talk about the relief corps enough. Like, the relievers make the difference in this tournament because the starters are so limited.
Starters only go 3 to 4 innings.
Yeah, quarterfinals and semifinals. It could be determined by a random reliever. I do like the mix they put together on Team USA. Mason Miller is going to have a huge task. He's going to be given the biggest, most important outs. I say I can't choose between the Dominican and Team USA. It's splitting hairs, but I'll pick United States in a really close match between those two.
Okay, you're around the USA team, and I've been making this point that, at the beginning, and I talked to Jed Hoyer the other day, and I asked him about, the comfort level that teams have with the WBC now compared to the way that it used to be. I think it's clear that the teams are more comfortable, and the players with USA are much more invested they were, 10, 12, 14, 15 years ago.
It's also a perfect storm this particular year coming off the Olympics. That has made a big difference. Everybody just sort of coincidentally, they were able to do this because the game was at 8 a.m. You know this. Teams are all in their clubhouses at 8 a.m. during spring training. They all watch the men's gold medal game, and a source of pride emerged. And I'm hearing more and more, especially with the world events, about wearing that jersey to represent the military and service people. And we know that Griffin Jacks and Paul Skeens were at the Air Force Academy. There's a lot of meaning to wearing USA across their jersey. And I just think the tournament's been more accepted throughout baseball over the last few years. And finally, we've seen other sports do this, separate teams based on national country, and it's created incredible momentum. The 4 nations, the NBA just did it at the All-Star game. We've got the Olympics coming up in baseball with potentially baseball players in it. There's just this national pride that goes on. It's always been there, but I think you're right. It's kind of emerged even more so. And the final thought is we really haven't seen the major injury. I mean, Edwin Diaz blew out his knee celebrating. We have not really seen the big injury or 2 or 3 or 4 based on the play on the field. They've done well with pitchers, and usually position players, unless they get nailed with a pitch, are going to come out of it fine. So I think all of that combined has led to players wanting to play in it even more.
Yeah, when I talked to Jed the other day, I just recalled the early days of the WBC when you literally had teams saying, we can't get a return phone call from the pitching coach of whatever team they were trying to contact with their guys. It unnerved them, and they have fixed that, and that's incredibly important. Last one, 60 seconds. Our colleague Eduardo Perez suggests in the aftermath of the Profar suspension, he thinks that once you get nailed, the guaranteed part of your contract should go away. In other words, and I modified that. I said, Eduardo, what about, you get busted once. If you get busted a second time, as Profar has, that's when the guaranteed language goes away. Like, I understand why teams are worried about the one false positive. The Player Association's worried about the one false positive. You get nailed twice, I don't think you should have a guaranteed contract. What do you think?
a union will fight that because you are already serving, you're not getting paid during the suspension. You're already serving that penalty. And even if it's a second time, he's not making a salary for this season, right? So I don't understand why he should not make his salary next year if he checks all the boxes. It's not ideal. He may not be the same player after missing a year,
Right.
but I could see the union. I could see the union fighting it. He is serving his time. He's paying the price. You can't avoid the contract like that. Maybe it'll come up in the new CBA, but I would see the union pushing back on that in a big way. And by the way, Buster, I hear whispers about roids more and more in the last couple of years. You don't think that technology, if that's the right word, or medicine has advanced where, for everyone that gets popped, are there a few that are getting away with it? You'd have to imagine so. Something to keep an eye on, and certainly as a reporter to keep your ears open on it.
Yeah, last 2 decades, one of the refrains I've always heard is the cheating is ahead of the testing, right?
Yeah,
They're always
exactly.
pushing the boundaries. So we'll see if we see other instances of this. All right, Jesse, thanks for doing this.
Buster, always great to see you. Be well.
Joe Martinez is the Vice President of On-Field Strategy for Major League Baseball, and he's joining us to talk about the ABS system. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, Buster, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been fun seeing the first days of the ABS Challenge system, talking to players about it, talking with umpires about it. What's your early perception of how it's going so far?
Yeah, I think it's going well. It's hard sometimes for me to separate like this major league spring training from, the other uses. We've obviously been testing this for a long time in the minor leagues, right, in spring training last year. But the players are doing a great job. I think the umpires are handling the change really well, and the fans seem to like it. So, we're very happy, and hopefully the fans and the players are too.
So last year, when this first the conversation really began to gain traction that this would be in place, I talked to a lot of players, on background staffers, and they were worried about what might happen if they offend umpires. And then just watching this play out, I think this is going to become such an ingrained part of the game that it'll be as nebulous as asking for an appeal on a check swing. Like I don't think that some of the worries that some of the players had are ever going to manifest. I think that everyone's going to sort of move seamlessly into this, almost the way we did the pitch clock.
Yeah, I think check swing's a good example. Replay is probably another good one. Umpires are pros, right? They don't get to this level without being really good, first of all, without understanding how to work and wanting to get all the calls right. Which every umpire, that's their first goal. So I'm with you. I think it's going to very much just become part of the game. I don't think umpires are going to take offense when someone challenges. And I think that, again, they just want to get everything right. And they're so good that, I think you're going to see they're probably going to be right more than they're overturned. So that'll be kind of an interesting thing to see how that plays out as well.
So I'm not going to put you in a position to advocate for one particular strategy or another, but this is the conversations going on in all these clubhouses. What's the best way to use once the regular season begins to use the ABS challenge system? What are some of the ways that you saw teams do this as you were testing this in the minor leagues and some of the rules that sort of emerged?
Yeah, I think a lot of the teams focused on trying to kind of get the most value out of their challenges. Obviously, they're limited, right? If you get any wrong, you lose them, and you only have 2 to start the game anyway. So, they want to make sure that when they do use them, particularly if they're not extremely confident that they're correct, it has to be in situations where it's an at-bat deciding pitch or maybe one that might mean a run or late in the game. Obviously, they're a little bit more common. So I think, we saw a lot of that in AAA. And listen, major league teams have so many really smart people working for them, much smarter than me, that I'm sure they're all going to figure out how to best employ these. I will say a lot of teams don't allow pitchers to challenge in the minor leagues. We'll see if that continues in the big leagues as well. And, as a former pitcher, I can say I probably should not have been allowed to challenge because I thought everything was a strike. So I don't know. I'm kind of fascinating to see how major league teams are going to use this and if that's going to differ from what we've seen so far in testing and in AAA. So, like I said, tons of smart people are going to find a way to use these the best way they can.
So the other day after Tarek Skubal pitched, I was in a group of reporters talking with him. He said, I'm not going to challenge. He said, unless it's like right down the middle. He didn't say this, but maybe when an umpire blinks and he knows it's a strike, he said, besides, unless it's egregious, I will never challenge. He said he wants to leave it to his catchers. Chris Sale saying similar things. Our colleague Paul Ambekides sent me this. I thought this was a great question. How did you guys land on the parameters of the strike zone, which is 27% to 53.5% of a player's height?
Yeah. So some of it was from testing, right? We tested different strike zone dimensions to see kind of what worked best. We also tested different ways of setting the strike zone, not just based on percentage of height. Through that testing, we kind of arrived at something that plays kind of as you would expect it to play, right? I'll give you an example. So at one point, we set the strike zone at the front of the plate, say with similar dimensions. And what we saw was there were some pitches that didn't kind of look right, that were called strikes. And an example of that would be like a big, slow 12-6 curveball would just catch the bottom of the zone at the front of the plate. The catcher would catch it pretty low, but it would still be a strike, right? And that just kind of looked odd. So, we moved it back to the middle of the plate, which is where it's set now, and that worked much better. So I think, through this testing, through feedback we've received from players, from staff, and through other kind of analysis, we've kind of settled on the current definition, and it seems to work really well. And something that's good for the players, right, is it's consistent. So if you're Juan Soto, right, you're going to have the same strike zone for every pitch, for every at bat this season. And he's already really good at judging, strikes and balls. He might get even better at it, which is going to be fun.
Yeah, the way you described that, it's like it takes me back to days of playing wiffle ball. I'm sure you did too. When you have the lawn chair to find the strike zone, you nick the edge of it and never actually seems to cross over into a strike zone. So, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you is why the middle of the plate and not the front of the plate, but you got it there. From a feedback perspective, what were the biggest surprises players have encountered in learning the zone?
Maybe expand on that a little bit. I'm curious. What do you mean by?
In other words, the feedback you're getting from players about how this zone plays as you guys are doing your testing.
Yeah, I think what's been interesting, and it might just kind of be logical, but is depending on how you stand, kind of impacts your perception of the zone a little bit, right? So. Like you said, right, the top and bottom are calculated based on how tall you are, and it doesn't change based on how you stand, right? How you stand. So, guys who squat down a little bit more might feel like the top is a little bit higher than they're used to, and the bottom's a little higher than they're used to, right? But those guys who stand more upright might feel kind of like those boundaries are a little lower than they're used to, right? So it's I think there's going to be a bit of an adjustment. They're probably going through some of it now, right? You've seen some really good players that have great strike zone awareness, get a couple challenges, confirmed, right? They thought it was a ball when it was actually a strike. But those guys, I think, are going to adjust, as they get more reps, as they get more used to their zones, and as they understand kind of how it relates to their specific stance.
We learned as spring training began that with the ABS challenge system that we won't see the strike zone that we're used to seeing as viewers watching games. Can you just sort of explain the thinking behind that?
Yeah, it actually gives us an opportunity to make sure everything's the same, right? Where the ABS zone, because it's based on math essentially, right? A percentage of height at top and bottom. It's the sides or the width of the plate. The strike zone that you're going to see on TV is going to be the same as what's used in the game and in the challenges is going to be the same that's on MLB game day, and all that. So. I think it's an opportunity to make sure all of those things match and the experience is consistent kind of through anywhere you're watching a baseball game.
So I was in the Yankees dugout yesterday during our exhibition broadcast, and one of their players came up and said, "Do you think we should go full ABS?" And I have my perspective for now. Where does Major League Baseball stand on that, and why the challenge system rather than full ABS?
Yeah, we generally, or not generally, we use fan feedback. To guide us in a lot of the decisions that we make. I'd include player feedback, coach feedback, right, on-field folks. So everywhere we've asked, everyone prefers challenge to full ABS, right? It just seems to be better for entertainment. I think there's a strategic element that people really enjoy. And baseball fans, right? They're kind of all a little traditional at heart, I think. They seem to like that human part of the game. The role of the umpire being still, the significant in the way that it is, while still providing players with this tool now to kind of correct, misses in really big spots, right? Which is, I think, how it's going to be used most of all. So, fans tell us this is kind of the best version of this. Players tell us this is the best version of this and the way we should move forward. And we're just kind of focused on that and making sure we give kind of everybody more of what they're asking for.
So with all due respect to a former pitcher like yourself, through my years of covering baseball, my favorite conversations have generally been with catchers. And as you guys have gone through this process, I've worried on behalf of catchers like, man, that would really affect if you went full ABS. That would affect these skills that have been crafted through years by catchers. What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, catchers are my favorite people to talk to also. Usually because when they're catching for me, they're trying to make me feel good. But yeah, I agree, right? That would be an impact of full ABS, right? His framing becomes something that's not a skill anymore, right? Because the system's calling, balls and strikes. So the challenge system still, keeps that as something that's important for catchers. Guys like, Patrick Bailey, Austin Hedges, guys who are really good at framing are still going to have a lot of value in being able to do that. And that's important to the game, right? I think there is like an artistic element to baseball that goes beyond, what technology can do, right? In that human kind of element. And as much as we can maintain that and accentuate it in addition to, just getting better and more accurate and things like that, I think if we can do both of those things, we're kind of heading in the right direction.
All right, Joe. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Alrighty, Buster, Bleacher Tweets for a Friday. We've got Rick in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He wants to know, he's a Mets fan, but he wants to know how you think the Rays will handle Junior Caminero. Will they sell him high the Rays way, or will they sign him long-term? What do you think?
With new ownership there for the Rays, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the team to sign him, especially at a time that they're trying to convince somebody in that area, one of the two cities, St. Peter, Tampa, to give them a new ballpark. I think he's going to wind up staying. And he looks like he's a guy who could challenge records as we go forward for home runs. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, Taylor, a lot of the data coming out of the exhibition games of the WBC. He's hitting the ball like 100, 110 miles per hour every time he's up.
Oh, wow. That's, good sign for the Rays there. I mean, if you're a Rays fan, you definitely want to see that long-term contract. That would be nice. Greg writes in, I love the new YouTube format question. He's asking about Austin Wells here. So he's wants an Austin Wells bounce back after the WBC.
Yeah.
He's hoping that working with Albert Pujols and different hitting coaches outside of the Yankee organization might turn that around. What do you think about his theory here?
Look, first off, I think he's going to bounce back. I think he was a better hitter than what he showed last year. He hit for power, but of course his batting average was in the low 200s. I know the Yankees really believe that he's got more talent as a hitter than what he showed last year. And it's interesting. All it takes is one word, one phrase, one thought from a hitting coach, and a player will glom onto that, right? Or any coach. We talked last year about Aroldis Chapman, right? Where he has the, right, in the Red Sox dugout, like he thinks about it, inside fastball, and all of a sudden, like it just changed the way that his brain thought. Maybe that happens with Austin Wells this year, Taylor.
Yeah, that's a great comp and a great callback to for the podcast listeners here.
Yep.
Let's go to Eli in Chicago. He writes, over the weekend, I was feeding my 1-year-old and looking for something to put on in the background. I remembered you were on YouTube and immediately watched the entirety of your episode with Aaron Boone. Good stuff, Eli. Yeah, don't forget, you could throw us on your TV. Good stuff. He writes, last year he emailed in a futures bet about Pete Crow Armstrong leading the league in stolen bases. He was a little off with that one, but he wants to know who you think could potentially lead the league in stolen bases this year.
So Elly De La Cruz was sort of everyone's favorite last year. I would go back to that if he's better offensively. Did you agree with me, by the way, when I was talking with Jesse, that I can't believe Perdomo is ranked behind Elly De La Cruz, given what De La Cruz did offensively last season?
Yeah, that's definitely like a name guy versus a guy who's really done it. What does that say about our votership at ESPN? I'm sure I'm guilty of lots of things like that. So
we love shiny objects.
Sure do.
Right? I mean, all those young guys, and you can go through our top 100 list. There definitely are players you're like, really? That young player really hasn't done that much, is ahead of that guy? I think Chris Sale was something like number 51. And I'm thinking of the pitchers that he's behind in our top 100, and it was surprising to me.
Liz Finny told me I had Yoshinobu Yamamoto ranked the highest out of anyone who turned in their list of players.
So during the winter, I did a hot stove event, and I talked about the conversations that we've been having about Paul Skeens versus Terry Skubal, best pitcher on the planet. And as I was doing that, Galen Carr, who's the director of player personnel for the Dodgers, he went to the same high school that I did, and he was on the Zoom. And I think after a while, he was tired of hearing me talk about it, and he was like, "Hey, what about Yamamoto? What about Yoshinobu? He's really good." And then when I ranked the starting pitchers, that was resonating in my head. I talked to some other people too. I wound up putting Yamamoto third, just ahead of Crochet. So that should make you feel good.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Actually, Liz was joking. She was like, "Oh, Buster's really rubbing off on you. You guys both had Yamamoto up high." So we are definitely one brain over here. Last one, Coach Sorensen, our guy, he writes in, "What does Buster miss about being a fan at the ballpark?" He says, "You got a great job. You're great at it. But there's got to be something that you miss being a fan at the ballpark, when you go in for a game."
Well, I am jealous of my son. I think I've talked to you about this. When the Tennessee Titans play in the fall, that is his day. He's so excited right now. And this is not a front runner bandwagon type situation.
No.
Huge fan of the Charlotte Hornets. And guess what? They're going crazy right now. And every day now, he's so excited about the Hornets. Dad, you watching? They're on at 7:30 on Wednesday night against the Celtics, and they have a big win. I love that type of passion, and I had it, growing up as a Dodger fan. I don't have it in baseball anymore. I don't think I'll get that back as a baseball fan until I'm done. And then the way my brain is working, I'm going to pick a team and watch that team every day. And I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm going to pick a team.
Your last podcast ever. We'll decide on the team, and you'll ride off into the sunset. All right, that's it for Bleacher Tweets. Great show today, Buster. Glad we got some new blood in the mix. I love talking top 100. We'll be back on Monday.
Yeah, and today, my thanks to Joe Martinez and to Liz Finny, Jesse Rogers, and to Taylor does a great job of this podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and remember, hate and inequality based on skin color is something we need to fight against every single day.